Namaste, viewers, and welcome to this new show we are starting today. It's called The Healing Arts Doctors Across Boundaries. And I'm really delighted and honored to welcome Dr. Ramesh Bijlani to the studio today. Thank you, Dr. Bijlani, and really grateful to you for joining us today. So, just a few words before we get started, Rameshji. The first thing I want to say is today is a very auspicious day in the Indian calendar. It's Guru Purnima, which is also called Vyas Purnima. And we are so, I think, honored and grateful that Dr. Bijlani ji is joining us from the Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. And what an occasion, what better day to start this new series called The Healing Arts. And friends, the premise of this series is that healing is not only a science, it is also an art. And those of our doctors who understand that healing is an art also become artists in their own right. They become actually writers, poets, philosophers, thinkers and podcasters, social workers, what have you. So, or yoga teachers. And all of this, I might say, is embodied in our very first guest in our first episode today, Dr. Ramesh Bijlani. So once again, with these words, thank you, Dr. Bijlani ji, for joining us. Friends, I'll just say one or two more words and then we'll get, Dr. Bijlani to actually give us his words of wisdom, which is that he was a professor of physiology at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences for a very long time. In fact, he was the head of department. And then something happened in his life, right? And we want to talk about that, which was the turning point. And now he's been at the Sri Aurobindo Ashram for a while, and he runs their Sunday satsang program. He has his own platform called Yes. We will learn more about that. He has many courses for yoga certification. He has written many, many books, and he has been awarded by the Prime Minister of India himself. So with these words, Dr. Bijlani, thank you once again for joining us. So my first question to you is, please tell us a little bit about your early life, your education, and how you joined the All India Institute, and some of your accomplishments when you were there at the institute.
I started as a child of a refugee family that came from Pakistan, and I was lucky to go to Salwan Montessori School, which was quite close to our house. Why I'm saying lucky particularly is because although it was not a very well-known school, it was a new school. And therefore, although not by design, by accident, I ended up getting some of the best elements in school education, very good and dedicated teachers, a small class size, and the same class teacher for the first 3 years in a row. So I got the benefits of a small class size and the benefits of Montessori, as well as the Rudolf Steiner system, the Waldorf system. Both I got there, and that's probably again by unique sort of a divine design. Now I see in retrospect, because if I had not been sent to that school, I had been sent to one of the schools to which most of the refugee children were going, the government school, I might have become a doctor, but a different type of doctor, not the type of doctor who could understand and read Sri Aurobindo. So going there was, in that sense, probably the preparation started right then. And in my childhood was a little different type of a child, rather shy, contented, and not demanding. The type of child that would please any parent or teacher, no trouble at all.
That's
so
wonderful.
That was the type of child I was.
So
and
how did you
pretty
decide
early in
to
life,
take medicine? How did you decide to take medicine?
So really early in life, I developed sort of a fascination for religion and spirituality. I was interested in that sort of things, and somehow the inputs also kept coming. So in a way, the preparation had been going on the surface also in this life for a long time. So it was not an abrupt thing that I came to Sri Aurobindo Ashram. And the preparation had been going on, and probably it might have some relationship to what preparation had already gone in previous lives. But to cut the long story short, I did join the All India Institute of Medical Sciences as an undergraduate student. After finishing my MBBS, I took the unusual step of joining physiology. Most people want to become clinicians, and that was partly because I wanted to teach, and in physiology, you get a lot more chance to teach than in the clinical subjects. And secondly, in here you don't have emergencies and you have a more structured life, so you can spend more time on reading and other hobbies. So
Just
these
a
were the
question
reasons.
about your school. One more question, just very briefly. What made you decide to choose medicine? Because it's a very hard elective in India. You have to study very hard. There's a nationwide entrance exam. So, what made you pick medicine?
That I should say was my father's influence. I
Okay.
didn't question it. I had nothing against it, and it just happened.
But you
Okay.
studied very hard to qualify for the All India Institute.
Yes, but I enjoyed studying. I was the type of student who enjoyed learning, and I learned my way. Why I'm saying my way is because many students in my class, they did well in their careers, but the usual trend was to learn by rote memory. I didn't like it. I hated the word memorizing. And therefore, I was very relieved when I finished with class 8, because till then I had to study history and geography, where a lot depended on memory, and I was not good at those subjects. So didn't have to study them anymore. But when it came to science, once again, I found that the way the teachers were teaching it and way most students were learning it, it was even worse than history and geography. So then I said, no, let me see if I can do it my way. So I went to the school library and picked up a few books uh, by some foreign authors, probably mostly American authors, on physics and chemistry. And from those books, I just read two things: the preface and the introductory chapter. And that was enough to tell me that these people do not know how to teach science. I'll study it my way. And the result was that although I failed in the first three class tests in class 9, by the time the volume of what had to be studied increased, my method worked much better than what other students were doing. So once again, I was at the top of the class. And since I enjoyed the way I was learning, it was not a burden. So I did
Wow.
well in all my exams, and therefore getting into medicine was not difficult.
So,
And in
so
fact,
the
yeah,
entrance exam. Now we've heard about the NEET crisis and all that. The entrance exam to you was not a crisis, or was it?
no, and those days the selection was competitive, highly competitive, but it was not as competitive as now. And each institution had their own exams. So for the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, only about 10,000 students took the exam, out of whom 35 were selected on the general seats. And they actually selected 70, and then 35 were eliminated through an interview. So, I mean, those days there was a lot of trust in the system, and these days you can't have an interview. And the questions were not objective. Even in the written test, there were essay type of questions.
Oh, really?
And it's
Wonderful.
not just physics, chemistry, and biology. We had one paper also on English and general knowledge. That was
My
also essay. That
goodness.
was also
My
essay type.
goodness. So, do you
So
remember anything about your interview?
yes, I do remember at least some of the things. I was asked. One of the things I did in reply to some question, I said that what I learned through experience was that one doesn't have to just learn what one likes, but also learn to like what one has to learn. And another, when they said that, okay, you can leave, actually, I wanted to continue longer on something. And I said that maybe I'm giving the impression that I have a lopsided personality. They said, no, no, you have a very well-rounded personality, and they let me go. Something to that effect.
That's wonderful. And you'd
Some of
already
the
told
things I
us what
remember
made
from
you
interview.
choose physiology. So
So
after finishing, your MBBS, was it, or MD? Uh,
MBBS.
MBBS. So
Yeah.
what made you decide to continue in All India Institute
That was the best institution in the country, and in fact was considered, and it was the best in Asia.
in Asia?
So, yeah, and so I continued, and as I said, I chose physiology because it gave me the double benefit of greater opportunity to teach and no emergencies, so a more structured life.
So,
But
so,
then
so
I
was it difficult to get a job? Was that very difficult? How did that
no,
happen?
no, getting jobs was not difficult, although at a certain stage I did have to leave the All India Institute and join, after my MD, I had to join the University College of Medical Sciences for a year and a half. But then I uh, succeeded in coming back to AIIMS. So anyway, uh, while studying physiology and doing my MD to get my doctorate, I had to write a thesis. And the trend in the department was doing animal experiments on neurophysiology. So I also did that. I mean, as I said, my attitude was that you also have to learn to like what you have to do. So I didn't question that. I did that. But then while doing it, I realized a few things. Firstly, that I was not made for animal experiments. I didn't like them. They were not sufficiently, I think, productive. It's made out that they all lead to as if they are great, will be of great use to humanity, and that's why they are being done. Secondly, I realized that we were always doing second rate imitative research because of our limitation of resources. So we're always behind the West. So we're not really doing cutting edge research. And thirdly, it was very expensive research in spite of that. So I decided on three things during my MD that when I finish, get my doctorate, after that I'll do human research. My research will be motivated by problems, Indian problems, so that it's not the type of research that is going on in the West. And I'll try to do simple research, which is low budget research. And by and large, I stuck to that throughout my research. So that's how there was a shift from neurophysiology to nutrition, because there I could find problems which were more relevant to India. And then the divine grace, it helped. When I came back to the institute after spending a year and a half in the University College of Medical Sciences, soon after that, I got a fellowship for going and working in a department in MIT, which was working on human nutrition. So that's where I learned how how human research on nutrition can be done. And then I came back and could continue that in AIIMS for more than 25 years. So within nutrition, gradually I zeroed in on nutrition in relation to chronic disease like cardiovascular disease and diabetes. And then what happened around 1990, this field started expanding and people realized that nutrition was only one of the several lifestyle factors which were important in relation to chronic disease. So they were looking at lifestyle as a whole. And some people are looking at yoga because that is the finest lifestyle ever discovered by mankind. At that stage, I didn't know much about yoga, except that it is a set of physical practices, and some of these I had started doing quite early in life when I was in my 20s. So that much about yoga I knew. But then the other things like that, it is not just physical practices, it is also for the mental discipline, and that it is a lifestyle as a whole, and that it's a spiritual discipline. These things didn't make any sense to me.
Correct. You probably hadn't actually studied Patanjali at that point.
No.
Initially,
So I had just learned from some ordinary book I picked and tried to copy the postures. That's what I had done, and I had been doing those for about 20 years.
so tell us, Dr. Bijlani, you spent how many years did you spend at AIIMS in all as a professor?
In all about 40 years, almost without a break, except that 1.5 year in University College, 1 year in the US. So
maybe about 35 years as a professor and about 5 years as a student. Would you say that?
I joined on the faculty in AIIMS in 1977, so 28 years on the faculty, out of which 18 I was a professor, and 9 years out of that I was the head of the department.
My goodness. What a long stint. So can you remember anything, or would you like to highlight anything about this long stint at India's premier medical institute?
Well, I mean, it was one of the best places to work at, and given another chance, I would still like to work in that institute, except that now I might choose clinical medicine in spite of my aversion to emergencies, etc. Because I did realize that you have much greater credibility if you are actually yourself treating patients. So that I did realize. But anyway, I have no regrets because there were enough compensations. And just sort of now to show how from research on nutrition I diverged, as I said, I mean, people were working on lifestyle as a whole. And then almost what may look like a coincidence, I was going through a difficult phase of life in 1992. That was the time this field was also expanding. And I read in the Sunday newspaper, in the daily events column, that there's a satsang at 10 in the morning in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi.
No, we will come to that in the next episode because that is the turning point. So normally what we do is the first episode sets the background. The second episode is the turning point, and then the third episode is all the different accomplishments that have, sort of accrued after the border crossing. But I was just curious about one thing. I mean, being a professor, a teacher primarily, is a little different from being a clinician, somebody who is actually treating patients. So, just a couple of reflections on that. Isn't it also true, though, that in your own ways you were helping people, though you were not treating them? Because once you got into the lifestyle and the holistic, you might say, approach, the integral medicine approach, if we may call it that, to see the human person in totality at the different levels, physical, vital, psychic, spiritual, etc., then you don't focus only on one thing. You want a complete package, as it were. So won't you also, not only in your teaching, so the pedagogy is very important, as you know, because many people you taught went on to become famous doctors. And I've known some of your patients, your students who themselves became professors and very famous doctors. So can you talk about that aspect, being a professor on the one hand, and also helping people without necessarily being, a practicing doctor in a clinical sense?
Yes, I mean, that indirect contribution was always there, that you may not be treating patients, but you are contributing to producing doctors and producing good doctors. Because and since I enjoyed teaching, my teaching was always with a difference. In the sense that even as a junior teacher, when I didn't give introductory lectures, uh, I managed to give many things which were not strictly related to the curriculum. And that's what the students remember more than what the curriculum was. And also, since I said, I started doing human research, many of my students who had finished with the phase in which I was teaching, they volunteered for those studies. So my relationship with students continued. And because of my philosophical bent of mind, my leaning towards religion and spirituality, and because of my wider reading, which went beyond medical sciences, I could bring a certain flavor into my teaching, which the students enjoyed.
Yes, I remember. I remember that at the time of your retirement, there was a huge program to honor you, and I was there, and I heard many of your students and colleagues speak about you. It was really a memorable occasion. So I know that the circles of influence, and now, of course, you're in touch with younger people. We'll hear about that more as well. But thank you so much, Dr. Bijlani, for inaugurating our healing arts series on a wonderful note, that too on Guru Purnima. So, friends, if you like our content, please subscribe to our channel, spread the word, send us your comments, and we would like you to come across other extraordinary doctors who are, not only people who have made a contribution to their own field, but who have expanded our understanding of what healing itself means and who have contributed to the upliftment of humanity, of human consciousness itself. With those words, thank you once again, namaste, and see you soon.